Hello everyone. So today we'll be going over Illustrator and its basic tools and how to use shapes and fills to make a cool illustration that you will use in a later project. So we're going to go over how to make a very simple bus stop. You can see several examples I've already made right here. I want to show you several so you can see that you don't have to stick to a certain color palette and you can make it either in the night or daytime depending on what scene you want to build. So the first very important tool in Photoshop is the shape tool. This is a tool where you can just create shapes. And then if you go over here, you can change the fill color. And then you can edit the shapes or layer them. So it's good if you think about Illustrator like paper cutouts. So you're layering elements to create an illustration. So this is very different from just drawing in Photoshop. So I'm going to start a new layer. I'm going to take my reference image, delete off that. I'm going to lock the layer I had open. So your layer panel is over here to the right. You also have properties, which are very useful, and libraries, which you probably won't be using much for this project. So here I have a reference image. And one of the cool things about Illustrator is that if you want, you could just use this. Since it is, you could find a royalty-free image, and then you could just lower the opacity, lock the layer it's on, and then using shapes, you can use that as a reference for what you're building. So I'm going to use this as a relative base, but I'm going to alter it to be more to my liking. So what we're going to first start off with is we're going to start off with the elements that will be furthest back. So I'm going to make that bar, and I'm just clicking and dragging, and then I'm going to Command C or Control C, copy paste, Command V or Control C. And then Illustrator wants you to line things up, so you can see when I alter it, it wants to snap into place. So let's say I want these to be a dark brown. I'm going to go to my double click here. Okay, cool. So I also want to make glass to be in the back. So I'm going to make a new square shape. And instead of having this solid fill that you can see right here, if you go, you have color, gradient, and none. If I hit none, it becomes just a null object. I'm going to hit gradient. So I have the gradient window up here. If you don't have it, you can just go to window up at the top and then go down to gradient, or you can hit Command F9. But I just always have it up because this is my workflow. Another really helpful tool to have will be Pathfinder, because if you have Pathfinder, you can do really cool stuff with just really simple shapes, which I'll show you in a bit. Another window I keep up is Appearance. And once again, if you don't see any of these windows, you can always toggle them on and off under Window. You also might have a different looking workspace than I do. I'm working with Essentials, but you might have Essentials Classic pulled up, but you can change it depending on what you want to do. So now that I have this gradient, it's very black and white. It's not going the direction I would want to, and it doesn't look like glass. So a very useful tool in Illustrator is the gradient tool. So I have this open, and if I double click right here, I can pull up colors. And then I have a color window open right here that I can use to adjust that color. So I want it to be a very desaturated blue. And then I do want it to go to white, but I don't want this white. I don't want all of this to be opaque. I want to be able to see through it. So for this, I'm going to set the opacity to around 50. And for this, I'm going to set the opacity to around 30. Maybe I'll boost this up a little bit. Okay, and now that's looking better, but you see how the direction is still going sideways. So I want it to go a different way. So a great tool, another tool to help you with gradients is the gradient tool. You can also just hit G, and you have to have it selected, because if you don't select it, the thing about Illustrator is you have to select it to affect it. That's the most important thing about Illustrator. So make sure you have what you want to affect selected, and you hold the tool, and there's this line that comes through. Now, if you just drag, you can affect the direction the gradient goes. So currently I want mine to go up and down, but you can also, if you hold shift, it'll make it where it only goes at proper angles. So I want it to be straight up and down. And you can also adjust where the transition is. So I'm gonna put it about there. That looks good. So now that's my furthest back layer. So I'm gonna lock it right here. And then I'm going to add another layer. And now I'm gonna make these posts. And you see, it remembers the last color you used. So I'm going to use the color dropper tool to select the brown instead. And then I'm going to copy and paste this. There you go. And if you're not using a reference image, there are other ways to snap things in place at equal distance from each other, but we'll go over that in the next part of this project. For now, we're just going to worry about the basic tools. So this is looking good, but let's say I want to add a little more depth. Now this is where the kind of layering of Illustrator becomes important. So if I just put a small square here, I'm going to make it a much darker brown. Okay. And then I can change the opacity, kind of where I want it. Then when you zoom back, it kind of gives the idea of depth to your illustration. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to put it on all the back poles. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to help nudge things over if they don't if they're not where you exactly want them to be. Also, if you saw what I did there, I double clicked and this is an isolation mode. If you get in this, to get out of it, just click off. It's not a big deal. Okay. So yeah, I'm liking how that's looking. And now I think I will make a new layer so I don't affect anything I just made, because if I lock it, that means I can't select it. So now to make a bench, I'm going to make my bench go all the way across just because I like how that looks better. And maybe now I'll make it a slightly darker color. Yeah. And then I'm just going to copy paste that. Make it thinner. And that still looks very straight across. So this is where I'm going to kind of take liberty with what I'm creating. And I'm going to make the seat more visible. So I'm using the pen tool right now. So you just drag and click. It kind of works like the selection tool in Photoshop. And if you hold shift, it makes the lines straight. So that's how you create new shapes. And to make curves, you can either click and then hold and then drag like this, and then create new shapes. Or if you've already made a shape and want to add a curve, you select it and then go to the curvature tool, which will add curves to what you made. These are both good methods. Sometimes one works better than the other, depending on what you want to do. So feel free to mix and match them. So now I'm going to make this seat bench a little darker because I think it would be in more shadow. Yeah, that looks better. And maybe I'll shorten this, the back of it, to match where it is. Yeah, I think I like that better. It looks more like a bench. Okay, so then I have my bench done. I'm gonna lock that layer, add the next one. And so now I'm going to add what's more towards the viewer. I think I'm going to make this even darker because typically darker things can be closer to you. Depends on the lighting, of course, but I want to add as much depth as possible. So now I'm going to add another one. There we go. And I guess I can add a roof. So I'm actually just going to go in with the square tool again, the rectangle tool. And then I'm going to go to that curvature tool again. And here is great because I can just alter the way this looks. So I'm just going to put it to the back. I don't think that's perfectly straight. Okay. Yeah, there's this little off. There we go. Sometimes I will just use additional shapes as guides because it's like using a straight edge in real life. So I think I'll make this a little lighter. Yeah, okay. So I like how that looks. But let's say I'm going to make a sign for the stop. Actually, let's do this in a new layer. Okay, and I'll make it a brighter color, maybe. Green. That's what I picked. Okay, and if I want to put a border on this, so I've been using fill and then having no stroke. You might notice when you are making objects, they might have a black line around it and not be as clean as this, or just not be just a solid color. And that's because you'll have a stroke. If you want to get rid of it, you can just hit none. You can hit color, or you can even have it be a gradient. But let's say I want to put a border around this, and I'll have the border be a darker color. Now I can also make that border bigger by going to properties and messing with the stroke. And I also can change whether it's a dashed line or not, but we're just going to stick with a simple stroke. You know what, let's make it a hanging sign. Maybe in the middle. And then you can also use the line tool, not just to make shapes, but you can also use it to just make lines. So once you make a line, if you hit return, it just leaves it at a line. And that's good for things like wires and poles and anything that doesn't need to be a full shape. So now we can get rid of our reference. And that's looking good. There's some white going on here. The good thing about working in layers is it's super easy to fix things. So I can just scooch that over. There we go. And like Photoshop, you also have the option of text. So if I just wanted to say bus stop, you can just type that in there. You can go to properties and you can edit the font. And then you can edit the size and the justification. So I want something. And if I want to make my font a different color, you just go where you've been changing colors the whole time. And I'll make it dark orange. Now I can also put a border around that. So if you ever want to switch what's the border and like the border and the fill colors, you can just hit this little arrow here. So now that text is outlined in the dark brown, but then I can add a fill color of maybe a lighter orange. And the last thing I'll add is, because we're working in layers, I can go in and add a little platform that this whole thing will sit on behind it. So I just made a new layer lower down. I'm just going to make a new block for it. Actually, I think I'll make it in front so it looks like a curb. And then I can, and I'll just sample that darkest layer. And there we go. So now if I want to move this for when we'll start building a city and we'll start making a scene with all the assets we make in Illustrator, you can just highlight something and then go to Object, Group, or Command G. And that will group everything together. It will get rid of your layers. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to Command C, make a new layer, lock all my work layers. And then I've made a copy of it that's all in one layer, but however, I can still move the pieces away from each other. So I'm going to highlight it, Command G, and then when I select it, it reads it as a whole object. So now I have a whole little variety of bus stops, but you just need to make one. But you can make yours whatever color you want. You can have it be more complex than mine. You can have it be a little simpler like these over here. The goal is just to get you comfortable with using these tools. So make sure you, if you have any questions, email me, and office hours are on Thursdays as always. And have fun getting started in Illustrator.